Rise to the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And with that, we are in order. First item of business is the approval of the agenda.
So there is one change to the agenda. Bank to the West was going to present to all of you at 10 a.m. But there was a little bit of confusion there, and what they want to present actually has some private information in it. So I explained to them that if they want to present to the full board, they would need to do so at a public meeting and just share, public information. They would prefer to give the board some private information, and also they are not able to use Zoom. They want to use a different program called WebEx for security reasons with their company. So I suggested that perhaps the finance company or the finance committee or just a couple of you meet with them at a later date via the WebEx. And so I told Claudia that I would tell you that today. So I don't know if you want to decide that now or at the end, but that item is removed from the agenda for today.
We can talk about it at the end.
Okay.
Just notification that the agenda changes. They're not going to be here.
Okay.
Notation, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved with that change.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to approve the agenda with the cancellation of the appointment by Bank of the West. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item of business is public comment.
We have to approve the minutes.
Oh, wait, sorry, I didn't jump ahead. Approval of the previous minutes from the board meeting November 2nd, 2021.
Make a motion.
I'll second it. They look good.
We got a motion and a second to approve the previous minutes from November 2nd of 2021. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now, public comment. Comment?
I don't know what to say. I just want to talk about zoning administrator.
Round up.
You want to state your name and
Name
where
and-
you're from?
Wayne Runnigan, Sheldon Township Supervisor and Board of Adjustments. Houston County Board of Adjustment Committee. I just would hope that you all pick somebody who's well qualified, is a leader for the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Committee, so we can further our advancement in Houston County. And I think there's a lot of buildings out there that don't have permits. I'm wondering if I'd like to see somebody go after them, but inside on. I would like to talk to the three applicants to see what they would do about the buildings that aren't permitted in this county, because I think it's so. I hope you put a local in. That would be my suggestion.
Any other public comment? Donna, is there anybody online? All we see is your name, Donna. We don't see who else is online.
No, there is not anyone else online, just the county.
Okay. No other public comment? Moving on to the consent agenda. One item. The approval of the 21-23 snow removal contract with WS Trucking and Construction. Just for the courthouse.
That includes the parking lot out here with sheriff, so it's this building area,
Right.
complex, sheriff and Colorado. Yep.
And the community service.
Well,
too.
the Meyer building too, yeah.
The Meyer building too?
Community
That's-
service building, yeah.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Further discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to action items. First is the consideration of authorizing the auditor treasurer to sign on behalf of Houston County the professional services agreement with DS Solutions regarding online election judge training services, and consider adopting resolution 21-55 authorizing the acceptance of the professional services agreement with DS Solutions to provide Houston County with an online election judge training course. This is through Donna.
Yes, good morning, commissioners. This is, as you can see, the initial course setup is $1,500, but that was a one-time setup. So we've been using this on DS Solutions now since I've started, and probably maybe 2 or 3 years before that. And that one-time setup has already been charged to us. So the only charge is the annual maintenance of $500, and then the hourly rate for alterations and customizations, which would only be which would only take place if there was an election and there were changes made. So normally there is not any, like this year, there were no charges for hourly rate or customization from DS Solutions. So, and it's also the per participant $11 fee, which is reimbursed from all the, we actually charge back the townships and cities if someone does take the online training, which there are people who can't attend the in-person training. So then we charge that back to the townships and the cities, so we don't get the $11 charge. So basically the only charge to the county is a $500 maintenance fee each year, and then the customization if there's something new with the election. So would be the new charges.
So will you continue to have in-house training also, or do we do everything online?
Yes, we do. We have the in-house training. And with the DS Solutions, many of the counties, 87 counties do use that tool because it saves a lot of time for setting up, all the PowerPoints, and they get all the new legislative changes in on the, when they do set it up for the online courses. And there's many people who do use the online courses. Last year, I think we had 209 people that signed up for the online course because of COVID and everything. And we may have the same next year, who knows? But depends on, we'll be doing the in-house training as well. But we use their course as a basis for our training. So we do use that as a tool when we do the training.
I really like the online training. It was very,
Yeah, it is really nice. Mm-hmm. Is there any other questions?
Looks like something that we need to keep and maintain and keep updated, so I see no problem with not going forward. So I move to authorize the auditor treasurer.
Motion made and seconded to authorize auditor treasurer to sign on behalf of Houston County the professional services agreement with DS Solutions. Further discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 2, consider approving out-of-state travel to attend the NACE conference. Morning.
So that the NACE conference, it's the NACE conference, it's the National Association of County Engineers Conference. They move it around the state, around the country. Historically, I've attended about every third year when it's in the Midwest. So I've been to the conference in Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, and Minnesota. I have not gone to any conferences around any other parts of the nation. Within the state, about 1/3 to 1/2 county engineers attend the conference each year. So usually when it's, like this one in Buffalo or California, Oregon, different places like that, usually I end up having upper 30s into the low 40s number of county engineers that attend. The reason why I'm requesting to go to this one instead of just waiting for the next one to be in the Midwest is that I'm currently the secretary of the Minnesota County Engineers Association. It's anticipated that come January, I'll become the vice president for the association. And usually the executive committee members attend the NACE conference, no matter where it's at, instead of just attending the ones that are more in the Midwest. So for county policy, attending the NACE conference would require approval for out-of-state travel. Getting there and back, I don't know if it'll ultimately be a plane flight or carpool with other individuals out there, depending on who's going, who's driving, who's flying. It's about a 13-hour drive, so it's a fairly distance drive. With plane tickets, it might make more sense to fly. So that's why I'm requesting approval. And then by getting approval now, it gives some time to start working on getting the travel arrangements set up in the hotel and some of the other duties that I'll be involved with on the county engineers side to get everything set up for the association.
This is in Buffalo, New York.
Buffalo, New York, yes,
There'll be snow on the ground still in April,
probably.
right up on Leary there. Is there any funding from the Minnesota County Engineer Association to assist? That's strictly ours.
Correct.
Okay.
So do we got a general idea how much it's gonna cost from a budgetary point of view?
Um,
I'm assuming it's not included in the budget at the present time.
Actually, I did put it in there for the stuff for the 2022 budget submittal
Oh,
for the.
okay. So it is in the budget already.
Yes.
Okay.
So the room, I think, is 4 days at the hotel, 4 or 5 days. They don't have a hotel cost yet, but they're usually fairly reasonable hotel rooms. The conference itself, they did some changes, so it was $100 for the conference. I don't know that exact amount along the travel. So it's going to be in that probably $1,000 to $1,500 range.
We have to pay for registration and all that too. So the national counties don't pay anything.
So
We don't pay a due or a fee to them.
yeah,
or-
so we are a part of, all counties in Minnesota are a part of the National Association of County Engineers. We're all part of NACE.
Yeah.
So there is a fee for that, but and the reason why I kind of don't know what the conference fee is this year is because they've done some changes how the conference is set up and how the fees are structured. Their budget is set up where the dues for the NACE conference covers the cost of putting the conference on. It used to be that the NACE conference dues would pay for some of the other costs associated with managing the NACE. So I think overall the conference fees are probably going to go down this year versus past years.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's no change from what's been done in the past.
Yeah, the only change over, this year versus, a couple of years ago when I went to the last NACE conference when it was still in Wisconsin, it's just that extra travel expenses to get there. And then there are the different continuing education, stuff that credits they get out of that and stuff for, additional knowledge.
More necessary because you're on the state board.
Vice president, you'll be vice president.
Secretary now, probably
Secretary now,
vice
but
president, possibly vice president next year.
So you're gonna get a promotion when you go there?
Mhm.
It'll be in late January is when the vote as far as the association.
Oh, okay.
vice president. But usually what happens is that the secretary becomes the only name on the ballot for VP. So.
It's one of those deals.
Moves up the ladder.
Well, being that you haven't budgeted, I guess I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to authorize travel expenses for Engineer Pogozinski to go to the NACE convention. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item of business is the consideration of approving resolution 21-56, final acceptance of contract 312 Icon Contractors LLC.
So this is finaling out the construction portion of project SAP 028-599-099, which is a bridge replacement on Freeburg Ridge Road in Crooked Creek Township. Original contract, $926,798. Final work certified, $922,169.82. So 4,000 under the original estimate or the original contract. So this bridge has been completed. The portion is not remaining. There's actually we have a more that's going to be required on this before we can close the project out, that we're still working on before we get all of our money back and submit everything from the state, but the construction portion of the project is done.
Well, if it's done and done so satisfactory, I move to pay the Icon Corporate contract constructors for the project in Freeburg Township.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to approve resolution 21-56. Further discussion? It is a nice bridge. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 4, consider approving change order request number 31 for the new highway facility.
So this is a change order request. This is a big change order that we've had lots of discussions on. We, meaning Kevin Barnes over at Weezer Brothers and myself and Fraser Construction. And I know Eric and Greg have both been involved with this. So change order 31 is for surcharge material that's put on over the area where the salt shed and sand gravel sheds are on the site, along with exporting excess material from our building project. So the change order amount is $61,517.67. Now we've looked at this number every which way as far as, you know, what was the original contract amount. This dollar amount is based on time and materials of Fraser to for their actual expenses to get this material hauled out. It was bid as $1 per cubic yard. Number of cubic yards, we've looked at what the minimum number of cubic yards could have been, amount of cubic yards it actually was due to how their operations were done. And the cheapest and best options actually be charged based on an hourly rate. So they have agreed to be paid out at an hourly rate. So it's a big number. When we looked at how this is affecting overall the contingency, this has been accounted for within the contingency number. Looking at how much contingency is remaining on the project, this has been accounted for in that number that we've had in the past. So once we pay out this 61,000, there's still roughly 70,000 worth of contingency remaining. And I don't know if either of the commissioners have been involved on that. Speaker.
Yeah, we've been beating this one up pretty hard and trying to find ways to lessen it. And this is the final product, what it's down to. So And like Brian said, this is it's still a 70,000 contingency, but it might be a little less after we get this other one. But yeah,
Are they bringing their own equipment or are they planning on leasing our equipment?
Everything that is remaining out there should all be their own equipment. So we help with, and that does have, within this, it has $2,607.50 reduction due to county equipment and staff being used. They got to last 2 weeks ago on Thursday. They Dunn Blacktop came in to do some paving, and some of the parking areas weren't ready for paving. So they didn't have equipment to do their work themselves. They asked, can we help out by bringing in a front end loader or a excavator to remove some material. Then they wanted us to do some trucking to help get some new rock in, haul some stuff out. So we did have some equipment time that reduced this cost a little bit to help out, but I'm anticipating we're not going to be doing anything else for them, although you never know if they get into some pinch and don't have equipment. There's a possibility that we'll do a little bit more.
have they done the reshaping of the holding pond?
Reshaping just to get everything,
I mean, that's all that down there is done? Is that,
everything is done yet for the.
so only thing remainder is the demolition of the old building, right?
Demolition of the old building, getting that, the remaining parking area under that building.
Right.
Area, yep. The west property or the east property line, there's a little bit of shaping and put topsoil down over there. They've been out there a couple days this week doing some other little minor finishing up here and there, but they don't have a whole lot left. It's pretty minimal for them at this point. Not under the contract. There was the old grasses and weeds and vegetation that was growing in that 3-acre field. Had some seed still in that when it was topsoil was put down. Some of that seed came back and grew through, so the vegetation is pretty dense. There's some weeds in that along with the grasses. We could have them reshape it and seed it down and try to get more grasses to grow, but we know there's still some weed seed there. And my recommendation is to not pay Weezer or a subcontractor to redo that work. We can spray that down ourselves, reseed it,
Yeah.
save a few thousand. Actually, with the slope of that, it probably would require erosional blankets and just seed them all. So save that cost of that ourselves.
Well, I make a motion to approve this change order for the highway facility on the surcharge on the material.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve change order request number 31 for the new highway facility. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So action item number 5, the reappointment of Mr. Getzinger and Mr. McCormick as watershed managers. Is Mr. Scanlon coming or? do we
I don't
act on-
think so. I
Okay.
think he just,
All right, so this is to consider reappointing Dan Getzinger and Tim McCormick as watershed managers to the Crooked Creek Watershed District. I know I talked to Tim about this the other day. For quite a few years as far as a watershed manager and whatnot. And said he would do it again. And I know they've done a good job as far as that's concerned, but I don't know if anybody else had even applied for it.
Mhm.
I think Danny Getzinger will do it again too. Yeah.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to reappoint Dan Getzinger and Tim McCormick as watershed managers for the Crooked Creek Watershed District. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Action item number 6. Consider approving a conditional use permit for Daniel and Marissa Solom to build a dwelling on less than 40 acres in La Crescent Township. Amelia,
Good morning.
good morning.
So this is a kind of just a standard dwelling on under 40 acres conditional use request. Except for the fact that this site has been there for about 20 years. Originally, it was a Crescent Township site, and originally there was a garage permitted there with notes that they plan to put in a house in the future, and that house never was built. They also didn't receive the CUP for it at that time either, and so we are correcting this site in a sense, but they're actually looking to build a standalone dwelling now. We did, just because of kind of that unique characteristic, we did include a third condition on it, that either if they decide not to build this house, that they need to apply for a change of use permit for the current shed dwelling structure, and so that we get that on the books as a dwelling instead of what it currently is. So, but otherwise, they meet all the other standards for the conditional use request.
And they do plan on building a house at this point.
Yep.
Small dwelling, shed before.
Mhm. Strictly a shed that was there.
They're living.
That's really like a one man apartment was in there before, but they're not living in there now. That was their.
Well,
Does he stay there once in a while?
no, they do live there right now, and they bought the site like that. They didn't realize until a couple years ago, Dan came in looking for a permit because he was going to add an addition onto the shed, and that's when we realized that it wasn't compliant. And so he pulled the permit at that time, and then they just waited until now. And so now they're looking to build a whole separate dwelling unit, and then this.
This will go back to a shed instead of a dwelling.
Yep, it'll either go back, well, it'll be what it's originally permitted for, and he could have some level of living quarters in there, I suppose. We do as an accessory structure, I guess we have a lot of like guest quarters, but it can never be used as a.
Right.
It's kind of a apartment.
So it's plumbed and.
Yeah, actually, if you look on Beacon, there's a few interior pictures there.
Mhm.
Full cabinetry. It looks, you wouldn't know it was a shed, I guess, except for that it's tin on the inside.
Right.
So we've got a motion and a second.
Oh, I'll make
a
motion to approve it.
Second,
Motion made and seconded to approve the conditional use permit for Daniel and Marissa Solom to build a dwelling on less than 40 acres in Crescent Township. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Action item number 7, consider approving a conditional use permit for Carl and Elizabeth Olsen to build a dwelling on less than 40 acres in Sheldon Township.
So Carl and Elizabeth are looking to split off about 7 acres from what is his family farm, and it's owned by his parents. And so I evaluated this for a dwelling again, and he met all the dwelling standards. It does have prime egg soils, but it's been pastured for at least 10 years, and actually kind of as far back as you go. And they intend, once they build, they're gonna keep most of it in pasture too. So he's identified 2 septic locations, and that was provided that night. That wasn't in the original board packet. And then Brian also kind of did a preliminary evaluation on the driveway, but there's a lot of open area there, so they should be able to meet the state driveway standard, or the county driveway standard, sorry. And so then on this one, like I said, they haven't created the parcel yet, and so we did require third condition that they have that surveyed at some before, because we need that legal description in order to write the order. And so that would be, otherwise the other 2 conditions are standard, so we just have that extra.
Third condition of a survey of the parcel being
yep.
of where he wants to build.
Yep.
Yep. Roughly 7 acres.
7 acres.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a kind of a standalone shed out there, and so
Barn,
we're going to do it so that stays in.
This meets it just still qualify as far as one per quarter?
Yep.
And to clarify again, is there a minimum acreage needed to have a parcel? I thought it was 5 or something like that.
So in the egg district, it's 1, but 90% of it has to be buildable.
Okay.
So he will have the minimum acreage of 7, but there is there's 0.9 acres that's buildable kind of right where he's looking at, because it does drop off, but its slope that is does not meet the 23% standard, but it's not a bluff, so there are no setbacks off of that.
He wants to build on that flat bench.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Don't see any problem with it. I move to authorize the CUP for the Olsen family.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to approve the conditional use permit for Carl and Elizabeth Olsen to build a dwelling on less than 40 acres in Sheldon Township. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item, next section.
Here you go.
Thank you, Amelia. Next action item is consider determination as to the next steps regarding the environmental director search. Information regarding rank order of interviewed candidates was previously provided. Yes.
I'm requesting permission to move forward with the board's top ranked candidate. Moving forward involves checking on references, working with the candidate to determine if there is an agreeable where an equitable placement on the salary grid would be, and then it would be bringing this back to the board for their consideration, or bringing information back to the board if in fact, for instance, there could be circumstances where the candidate has backed out or other things, but it's just to pursue the next step of the process.
So you're going to work with the candidate on a compensation package?
I would be looking at the NAEP agreement and be going through what would be considered based on the person's qualifications and experience as a starting wage for that individual, with the understanding that's conditioned upon board approval.
So you'd be starting the checking references and the background check with the
Correct.
next step as part of the process. And then you work on, at that point, you work on the compensation package or
In the
all at the same time?
conversation, it's all conditioned upon board approval. I enter a conversation with regards to salary, as I normally do with other positions. Determine what may be appropriate, as well as potential start dates. So then it would come back to the board as other hire requests do, with that information in place for board consideration.
And that's when we would actually approve the person at that
Approve
time?
the hire
Approve the hire, I like, yes,
or not.
or not.
Well, I'm not real settled with your approve of this guy. I mean, he has no experience at all in the zoning part. He said that to us pretty much that day. He's probably never done a building permit. He has no septic license. And he's never done a work comp plan. You gotta look at this a different way here. We gotta hire somebody, or else we gotta certify him to get a license for a septic. He doesn't have one. That's gonna cost us probably $15,000 to $20,000 to get him certified. Well, in that time, we gotta hire GQ to do all our septics, so that could cost us another $20,000 in that time, because that don't happen overnight. And then we have to have somebody hired to do a land use plan, because he has no clue what to do. So we really are going backwards by hiring this guy. Because it's gonna cost us about $60,000 to get him trained, get him licensed, and get people in here to get us going in the right direction. Right now, we're not going in the right direction, we're going backwards, so we put the right person hired that has some experience. This guy has no experience.
All due respect, Commissioner, the board interviewed the applicants. This applicant was the highest ranked. The applicant's experience in education is far exceeds what our minimal requirements were.
That's fine, but I never got my resumes till 5 minutes before the interviews. And that's kind of hard to pick your person when you only get time to look at it for a few minutes. We should have had the resumes 2-3 hours before the hearings, so we could have studied them. My scores would be a lot different if I could have read the resumes first.
We did ask some very good questions of each applicant though, and we ranked them on their answers. I know I took a lot of comments of what each one submitted to us. And that was the essence of the interview process. And he did state all his education and his professionalism as far as leading a department.
And as far as holding public hearings as well as his professional expertise in civil engineering, soil analysis, the policy development, as I recall, those were the major factors. Working through, providing examples of working through complex issues where there are multiple interests at the table and trying to come up with and pulling the parties together to where they come up with reasoned and viable solutions for that tend to work for all the parties. Working with in a heavily regulated environment, trying to work through some of those, the nuances of having state issues, local issues, as I should say issues, regulations, etc. It's I believe the outcome of the results. My job is just to look at the equal employment opportunity to make sure that that is followed. I believe the board's outcome is in compliance with the areas of oversight that I'm responsible for, and at this point, it's the board's determination as to what it wants to do for next steps. I think there was both subjective and objective evaluation in that process, and I think it was well documented. Therefore, it stands to reason to me to move forward with the process at this time, and that it would be unprecedented. From the county's perspective, we have solid EEO history. I would encourage you to consider moving forward.
So we're basing this job offer based on those 12 questions of the interview we had with all three candidates. The scoring is, that's what we're using to.
And the board's analysis and opportunity, the committee's analysis, I shouldn't say committee because it's a committee of the whole, committee of the board, if you will. Analysis of the responses, opportunity to ask follow-up questions that were open-ended. In fact, the interview questions themselves were open-ended, lending themselves to opportunity to get to know the qualifications of the candidate, the background of the candidate, as well as to provide for the candidate to provide the board with examples of the experience as it would fit in the board's opportunity to ask follow-up if you have.
So
This
there was scoring for job experience in this particular job. There was scoring for that to take into account of the candidates.
I believe the commissioners did. I believe the board as a whole did. Each did.
Because pre-interview, there was a score and the top score in the pre-interview was the highest, and then after the interview was the lowest.
And that's not necessarily unusual. There was a paper rating of the applicants to determine. There were four applications. After the ratings, 3 applications were put forward. They seemed to cluster, if you will. They're based as far as point wise. And they were based on, I think, relevant factors, but that is only to get through that first initial stage. That's just a paper rating of the application itself.
So that
Then there's
rating's
the
not,
opportunity for the board, if like in our staff interviews, for a drilling down, if you will, further into the person's experience, abilities, and etc.
so those scores weren't used in the final rate
No.
tally of the, so those pre-interview scores weren't tallied into the
Those are
final?
just.
I think the pre-interview was just, I know when we have like 6, 7 people applying, we do the evaluation to determine 3 of them that the board would interview.
Top
And
3.
that's the way it's been done in the past with department heads, having full board interviews instead of just a couple people. And that's what we did.
And sometimes that preliminary rating of the applications, if you will, may yield candidates clustering around in score groups. So we determine who may be our initial group of interviewees. It has not been, let me provide you with this example, it has not been unusual in several of our searches that we will get through our initial higher ranked interviewees as far as higher ranked in the initial rating to see if they qualify for an interview. And then determine that, well, they actually didn't meet the qualifications. We've had several staff that way. They couldn't provide the examples of the experience the committee was looking for, and we'd go to next rank and just move through that process. Once the ranking is done of who gets an interview, that is set aside. Then it is then yield to the interview scoring.
Is it safe to say that the ranking on the pre-interviews was based on previous experience in the job?
As we could tell from a cover letter and the application.
So where is it that we can use that scoring in the process, in this interview process, to rank them on their previous experience in the job?
We don't, it's the person's doing the interview. They're asking follow-up questions, their questions during the interview. And this is what we do for every search we have. We have a very solid record with.
Did we do it with the last environmental services director we hired?
The last environmental service director was appointed pursuant to attrition in the department. So there was a collapsing of the jobs. That's the only time when we don't interview externally.
Who collapsed? Who left after? I mean, I don't understand where that attrition came from.
I'll go back and collect all that data for you and be happy to present that to you.
There was a retirement from the environmental service director, which should have created another search. And
The
like
board
we
at
just
that
did
time
here to,
determined it wanted to collapse the planning and zoning officer and hire staff side for the solid waste. And there, I can gather that information. I don't think that's relevant to this situation at all.
We did do, for like human services, we did full board interviews of candidates and.
well, that's because you
Move
collapsed,
forward.
you public health and human services, you combined them. You didn't do that in the environmental service department, the zoning department. That was never collapsed.
Well, like,
I will put
Our
to
process
the
is to
board
do-
that the process has been followed, has been clean. Has been consistent with past practice, other than when we are collapsing or downsizing, if you will.
There was no
Positions.
downsizing. You had a retirement of the environmental service director and you just appointed,
I didn't just appoint anybody, Commissioner. I will bring
The
all
board
the
appointed, right.
documentation to the board, but this is not process today, nor that process are inconsistent with each other, nor are they inconsistent with the county practices as we move through positions in the county. They're not inconsistent with each other because there are far different circumstances on department staffing and what was happening with collapsing positions.
And that was before he retired, that the board made the decision that he should be part of the process of the environmental services. This is a different case. This is
yeah, let's go
this
back
is
to
a
this
different
one.
case, yes.
So,
well,
my consideration-
I guess what I brought up at personnel committee is I'd like to do second interviews so we can have more pointed questions to interview the candidates to get to their experience of the job.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I felt differently. I was at the personnel meeting and I thought we did a good interview process with our candidates and I didn't see any reason to start over again.
Well, it's not starting over, it's a continuation. And there's been often a lot of times where we have second interviews for hires in this county. So I think it would be pertinent to do a second interview, to have more pointed questions, to have them do a project or to have them show a problem-solving situation when it comes to zoning. And to show us, because this is a very important position that works with the public on a daily basis, to show us that they have the skills to problem solve and to tackle tough situations in zoning.
Commissioners, we have had second interviews in the past for positions when the committee is inconclusive. You have conclusive, the committee as a whole, like I said, the board as a whole was not indecisive. So I just want to clarify, that's not my recommendation at this time. We have a clear indication of first rank, second rank, third rank. If they're, I said, if coming out of your interview process, you had lack of clarity, you needed to have further information, and determined that you couldn't do that without a second interview, that certainly could have been an option. Of course, this is all within board discretion. The board can do as it wishes. And just explaining how the second interview process historically has been for county searches.
And historically, we could, if we would decide as a board wanting to do second interviews, we could do that. Correct?
If we needed to.
How do we know we don't need to? Because we're just going by rankings.
We had
The
12 good
rankings,
questions.
the rankings based
on-
on our interviews with the three candidates.
Correct.
We all had a chance to ask those questions and ask follow-up questions. We did that. We have ranked everybody. Now the question is, do we move forward with the references, the wage grid discussion, background checks, and potential start dates? So now it's a question whether the board approves that or doesn't approve it. This is not to
So
hire
this is an
the,
action item?
this is an action item.
We need a motion.
It
Number
says a
8.
discussion here.
No, it says
No.
consider determination.
Consider determination.
It's an action item.
So it's under an action item.
As I see this, there were not 3 applicants. There were more. We graded them down to the top 3. The top 3 were the ones that we interviewed. We used a point system. Could have been A, B, C, but we used 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we came up with numbers. We listened to the responses, evaluated the responses, evaluated their demeanor, how they could handle things. The individual that we're discussing at this point has a lot of experience in dealing with the public and some of those issues when he was dealing with landfills, which are way bigger than anything we'll have here. He's strong in solid waste and things like that, which we have had some discussion of concerns in this county. We need to look at what's best for this county and his strengths. They all had strengths. Some had a little bit more, but his experience, his level of working with on state level, and all the other things makes him pretty qualified. And again, working with the public as he had to in some, well, it sounded like some controversial issues over there in Wisconsin. So he's gone through and shown us that he's capable of handling certain things, and some of those is going to be at management. The other things will come along. I don't know where the figures came up as far as costing us $60,000, $70,000, but you know, we're all trainable, and his management skills are going to be needed to correct some of the things. And as was brought up, he says, hey, there's buildings around here without permits. Well, he'll clean it up, I feel. So I think we're going to do what's best for the county overall and not for a friend or something.
What's that?
Well, I'm not arguing he's qualified.
A
For
friend.
tilt, there's no doubt about that. He's got every damn thing you want. There's no problem there. I'm not arguing that. I'm arguing experience because we're gonna have to get him licensed and all that, and that's gonna cost $50,000, maybe $60,000 of taxpayers' money that we don't need to spend because we have 2 candidates below him that got all the qualifications we need for Houston County.
Just out of curiosity, how do you calculate 50 to 60,000?
Well, it's gonna cost you 15 to 20 to get him certified for the role.
How do you figure that?
That's what the cost is, trainings. And then you gotta hire somebody, you wanna hire somebody to do the land use plan. What's that gonna cost? 10?
Way more than that.
Okay. So.
And it doesn't matter who the person is that's environmental director. It's going to cost. No matter who it is, it's going to cost.
Yeah, but we have 2 candidates that can do it. The one candidate has already done it.
But we went through the interview process. I think we need a motion to move forward on the background checks, the references, and determining the compensation package.
So who gets to determine the compensation
Well, it
package?
should go through HR.
It will come back to the board ultimately as a request. And certainly it will, has to be, when we work with potential candidates, sometimes we can't come to an agreement. It's just the way it is. It isn't that we just keep going and going and going. We base it on their experience. Sometimes you have to base it on trying to track them, some market factors. I don't know where this candidate is with regards to that.
Well, we'll
So-
make a motion to move forward with the 3 items for the top ranking candidate at this point.
Second, for discussion.
So we gotta deal with that complaint.
We've got a motion and a second. Now we can have further discussion.
There's been a complaint made, what are we gonna do about that?
We will investigate the complaint. And talking to Sam, he said there is no reason that the board cannot move forward and still do the investigation of the complaint, because he didn't feel would have a bearing on whether or not we decided to move forward.
There's a conflict of interest here too. So, we've gotta have an investigation.
Well, my motion is just to move forward on the background check, the references, and putting together a compensation package, moving forward
So you put together a compensation package
through HR.
through HR. And so you sit down with the candidate and you say, well, this is what we're thinking. Would this be sufficient? And if he says, no, I need more, you have the authority and leeway to
I,
offer more?
I have the authority and leeway to discuss it. I bring it, the board is the only one, we always bring the compensation back to the board in every search.
So it
we
could be
do.
a second or third offer that you would have to go to offer him to get it to bring to the board? I mean, how do we know that? How many offers it took to get him to?
One offer, or are we gonna make two or three?
It's a negotiation.
And it's very
That has
limited
nothing to-
negotiation. We have a pay grid. This is a MAPE position, Minnesota Association of Public and Professional Employees. We have a wage grid, we have guidelines as far as looking at our own grid itself as far as what the kind of experience the person has versus where they might be on that grid. We have, it's not a compensation package because the terms and conditions of employment are negotiated through the labor union with the county. So all that's really set forth in the collective bargaining agreement. There really is very little discretion other than that discussion as to potentially what would the appropriate placement on the wage grid be for a person with certain levels of expertise. That may be, it could be at a starting wage. It could also be at midpoint or a little higher than midpoint.
What's the range for this position?
Those 9 steps. I'd have to go back and look at that.
Isn't it 74,000 to 109? Is that the range?
I'd have to go back and look at it. I think that's real close. That's, it's a D61. So I don't think it goes as high as 109,000 to D61.
So
It's
in
much
the,
lower.
in his job description here, you know, he talked a lot about solid waste because that's his background, that's his expertise. In the job description, that's only 15% of his time. 60% of the time is management. But we also, what's that?
Which we need, management.
But we also have an office manager who does a lot of the management of that office. So we're getting that office, the way it's being put together here is getting a little clustered as far as people with their expertise, because the office manager went from a B23. Well, she wasn't an office manager there, but she was a B23 and she's now a C41.
So that office
Yes,
manager
nothing to do
title
with
Who
is-
does more of the solid waste. She took over more of the solid waste duties. So is that going to revert back to her original?
Those are more, the office manager that's discussed there is more clerical in nature, not department manager. We have to look at, keep in mind the department head is in this role would be doing a lot of the policy analysis as far as some of the other higher level things. I can't answer your question as to, I would imagine it's going to revert back. We certainly look at having our department heads as having expertise in one particular area, but doesn't mean they don't that they actually do all of the.
I think we should call for a roll call vote. Move forward.
So if, as long as we're gonna hire this guy and he's a solid waste, what's gonna happen to Holly then? Is she gonna go back down on her pay? We just gave her a raise to run the solid waste and now we're gonna hire somebody else to take over.
Let me give you an analysis, commissioners. We have, and my apologies for referring to another colleague. We have a Health and Human Service Department, for example.
Mhm.
Our director in that department has particular expertise from his background in one particular division of Health and Human Services. We still have expertise that is out there doing the, it didn't eliminate the other positions necessarily. So there are, and we can look at many of our departments are the same way. Where there's particular expertise in one area, but what their true role is to have oversight, foresight for the future, trying to mitigate issues and costs moving forward, trying to determine what future needs of their division would be, maybe it's hard to say 10 years down the road anymore, but 5 years is sometimes even difficult in these fast changing times. There are a lot of things that a department head does besides those duties that may be inherent to very specific expertise.
Well, I think it looks,
Can I ask a question for the record? Because the conversation, I just want to make sure I'm getting this right. It's been a little bit hard to follow. So the rank order was determined just based on the interview or also based on experience? Because
Based on the
that's,
board's interview.
okay, because that's what was not clear to me. Okay.
and that's where I would like to have a second interview to have something to judge by on experience.
Well, we have a motion.
I mean,
We
we
got a
have-
motion and a second on the floor to move forward with the determination as far as the review of references, the wage grid situation and the background checks and the potential start dates. That's a motion made and seconded. So that's what we have to take action.
I understand that, but this is discussion. And
Right.
what I'm saying is that this doesn't look fair to the public that we're going to make a job offer based on one interview with 12 questions without taking into the account experience by the other two candidates, one who is currently doing the job and doing a fine job at that, and has stepped up and took over the job when the other one resigned. So, and the other candidate used to do the job. So I think it would only be fair to take into account their experiences in the job. I mean, that's where it was in before their interviews. They were rated higher, and all of a sudden it's got flipped in the interview on 12 questions. It doesn't make sense to me how that happened in a 12-question interview.
How it happened is that we all evaluated their responses and their demeanor and listened to them. And as we went through and saw where they were strong or strongest or whatever, that's how we did it. And like I said before, I don't know how many applicants first started out, but we took the top 3. We talked to them, we interviewed them, we evaluated. That's our job. And when we evaluated them, I don't know who, the numbers make no difference to me. Who voted one way or who wrote 1 or wrote 5 or whatever, that doesn't count. What was the final score? The final score has been evaluated by HR, and the number, who knows, could have been 20, 19, and 18. I don't know, and I don't care. They were evaluated by a third party. She took our information and put it into a spot. And I think we're repeating a lot of stuff. We're going over this a lot. Call for the question.
Well, last time when we heard the environmental service director, they didn't take the top candidate, they took the bottom. So, I mean, your score
Okay.
don't mean much.
But at the present time, we have a motion and a second that we have to take action on. The
Let's have a roll
discussion
call
is kind of circling and repeating itself here as far as different people's opinions and then just recirculating. So I'd like to call the question. Teresa asked to call the question. Dewey asked to call the question. So we're going to have the vote. We're going to take a roll call vote by individual. See what we decide. And this is not to hire the person. This is to go through the EEO process and whatnot as far as the determination of reference, background check, the wage grid. That comes back to the council or to the board again with regard to the actual hiring. If we cannot meet on wages, if there's a problem with background or whatever, this isn't to hire. This is just to carry forward with the procedure as far as going through those aspects of it. So in voting by roll, District 1.
Yes.
District 2.
No, based on, I would request second interviews.
Right. District 3, yes. District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
No, I agree with, we need to have second interviews. And we need to have that investigation done. Why are we gonna
Okay.
tax the goddamn county people more money when they got the people right there? Don't make any sense.
Well, we voted 3-2 to continue with this, with the number one candidate and see how that turns out. Tess can do the references, the wage grid discussion, the background checks. It'll come back to us for whether or not we hire that individual, if they're even going to continue.
So who's gonna do the, check out the complaint and do the investigation?
We are
I know nothing about that.
talking with, Sam and Carol have talked with regard to who we can use to do the investigation, outside entities, because we have conflict of interest within the county. So we'll have outside entities do the investigations.
Okay.
Moving on. Thank you. We have board updates. We had our community services meeting this morning. I'll let Dewey talk to that. One note I'm going to make is that on the 23rd of November, we have a Houston County, Fillmore County joint board meeting. I'm not going to be able to make that meeting, so I'll have to talk to Donna and find out who is the vice chair of that committee to handle running that meeting, because I have an appointment I cannot break.
That'll be somebody from Fillmore.
Somebody from Fillmore is whoever it is. I don't know who
I
it is,
probably have it in my notes.
and I got it someplace, but Donna knows who it is. And we'll just call Bobby and tell her.
Is that going to be in Mabel as far as we know,
As
right?
far as we know, I thought at
Okay,
noon,
that's what I wrote down, 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
have it in here at another time.
So Dewey, you can start.
Well, basically, it was just Rob there this morning. John was not available. Discussed about the community services, the transporting of vets. He has a driver shortage. But he's doing okay, keeping up with it. He's got a quote on the van, the replacement van that they're talking about. It's about a $19,000 addition to the lease. It's the equipment for the wheelchair accessible and so on. He's within budget, slightly over on the driver part because of overtimes or whatever, but I got a lot of insight, a lot of information from him, from just learning what he does, and it was nice to have a one-on-one with Rob. He's looking for drivers. Other than that, the bridge project in La Crescent is going well. The bike path one that's over to Highway 6114. That just kind of marvels me that people come to me and say, what's going on? I said, what's that bike path pedestrian? And some people just don't know what's going on. It's just, it's going good. Icon has that project. They're I think they're ahead of schedule the way I saw them. So that's about it at this time. Oh, one more thing. I've been dealing with the county attorney on the no wake deal on Shore Acres. I got a memo from him and we're just gonna try and do some clarification and find out what we could do or can't do. So that's in the works.
Icon's doing the bridge, whatever you said?
It's really coming along.
Yeah. They brought their cleanest, newest machines. They all look pretty.
I know, that's what I thought too.
Brand new John Deere backhoe.
Who's gonna jump off the bridge?
Yeah, that's it there.
They'll probably have these big signs like they do it over the interstate.
So they can't. They should have a cage over it so you can't jump off.
You know, I think there's some design to it that's quite elaborate they'd really have to want to climb over it.
Well, I mean, you read it all over where people jump off. of
Yeah,
bridges and
yeah.
it's nothing.
Yeah, that's true. That's it.
Is that term bike path or walking path?
It's the wagon wheel plan.
It's a bike bridge,
Bike trail.
bike trail bridge.
Yeah.
Extension of wagon.
Correct. Yeah, the wagon wheel goes through Shore Acres there and then comes up and to get them to the downtown area and is this bike bridge pedestrian. The other thought too is when they were doing that, to get people from the residents on the east side of the highway safely over. That was discussion, but I don't know if that's gonna have people walk 4 blocks this way to go 1 block that way type of thing. So, but that was also some of the argument when they were getting the grants for it. So, yeah, but that's part of the wagon wheel bike trail.
Thank you.
Eric?
Had a land use meeting this morning. Recorder's office is staying fairly busy, nothing overwhelming at this time, but they feel there's gonna be a push in coming on at the end of the year. Surveyors are doing their work as usual. There's been some discussion on beacon and property lines and the establishment of corners. The red squares are they're the reliable corners. And that's what they're trying to base their lines off. So there's just a general discussion on all that. And Amelia chimed in because she's had some issues with beacon on trying to determine setbacks on lines for new buildings and stuff. So general discussion on that. Brian said that, we talked about that Kelch property out of Brownsville. He wants to meet with Teresa and I on that to discuss that further. He also brought up something very disturbing about the steps that were out here in the courthouse. The way it sounds, they're gonna have to tear out the concrete of this new steps and start over and re-pour because the steps slope in instead of sloping away.
Which won't be a cost to us. The contractor will have to deal with that, but
Right.
even so, it would have put off the project for months
It's not
again.
gonna be completed. And so, but they're gonna leave the stone there, but they're gonna have to pull out the concrete and start over. From what was said this morning.
Sound like they just got the notice this morning too, so. Hot off the press there.
Everything, if it rains, it's all gonna run towards the building.
Yeah.
Each step is gonna hold water.
Each step, that's how they found it when they pulled off the plastic and there was puddles in the step that, I don't know what happened. It shifted and it's sloped in instead of sloping away.
Couldn't believe that either this morning.
Wow.
Somebody didn't know how to read.
Uh-huh.
The bubble went the wrong way.
I don't know.
Evidently.
That's not gonna be an easy task to take that out because it's all rebarred.
I know.
I mean, it's rebarred and rebarred to
To the sidewalls too, wasn't it?
so the sidewalls will end up coming out.
No, they said supposedly they're not gonna touch the sidewalls because they stoned that.
The stone is like far from, but there's those little
Yeah,
pieces I suppose.
I don't know how they're gonna do it, but it's,
Oh, Lord.
It's gonna be a tough one.
it's gonna be a lot of handwork is what it'll be, yep.
It's that bolt underneath, right?
To do it safely, yes, because if you start taking a big jackhammer to it, it's gonna,
Yeah.
disturb the walls and then they have to
Mhm.
start all over.
Rock on sun might fall over, start jackhammering. Come off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chip or break.
Maybe they'll decide to take your grinder.
That's a big saws, maybe they can cut it out, I don't know.
Other than that, I had labor negotiations and we haven't made any progress on that yet, as of yet, so.
Is there a big stumbling block with the negotiations? Far apart?
Fairly far apart.
Okay.
Yeah, it's-
Okay. One thing, Greg, you and I should get together and discuss finance as far as budget information and review that again at some point. So we've got some information. Just to review where we're at on that, what we've got available. I have 3 names that are capable of doing comprehensive use plans, assisting with the comp use plan. And we'll have to come up with a request for a proposal.
Don't we don't have to do an RFP because we've done one already, or what?
Another RFP.
Okay,
And send it to these 3 plus publish, plus advertise it. But we'll look at the prior RFP to see what it said and what we want to change.
I don't think we want to use the old RFP advertisement. We want a whole new one.
Right, but we can look at the old one to see what we're asking for then and what we're wanting now. We can talk about that at the work group now. That's all I wanted to mention.
That's good. That'd be a good discussion at a work group.
To you, Teresa.
Okay, I had negotiations, which we basically set up more negotiations at this point. And we had, Eric talked about our land use meeting and he summarized it well. And I had WinLAC all yesterday morning. And we have to have a plan submitted to get our grants, to work with Bowser, to work with the One Watershed Plan, everything by June of '23. So yesterday we had to pick out 11 top priorities that we are most concerned about in this WinLAC area. And I did ask them to send me a summary of what our conclusions were, which I will send to the rest of the board when I get it written down. I have a lot of notes otherwise, and it was very informative meeting and it takes a lot of public input, but we have plenty of time. So I'll forward that when I get it. That's basically what I had. That and a lot of family businesses.
Yeah, sorry for that. All right, Greg.
What is, your finance meeting, can we do that next Monday, maybe at 11:00?
Monday, the 15th,
That works for me.
works just fine. 10:30 on Monday?
Yeah.
The 15th.
And the other thing I have is with the zoning that we're having trouble with this beacon. I mean, it's not, is there any other source out there that we can use that would be closer to? We're talking 25 to 50 feet off. I mean, that's hard to regulate when you're doing permits for zoning, you know?
Well, that was part of the discussion today at land use. And there's red corners that are established that are spot on, and that's what they gotta go by. But the way Tammy explained it, that they have to put it in wrong purposely for Schneider so that they can do an auto correction down the road
Mhm.
to make it all shift to where it's supposed to be. It doesn't make any sense to me, but this is how they have to do it. Until this automatic shift comes into play and it gets people back in now. It's got to be made clear that the beacon lines are not legal lines. And so if there's any question by the zoning office, what they really should do is go out and measure with surveyed line or what they pursue as the line out at the site. They
Or get
can't
a
go
survey
by
done.
beacon. I know a lot of the measurement is done off beacon. And, you know, some property owners get upset. Well, that's not right. That line isn't right. So
Where does Beacon get their information? Don't they get it from the county surveyors of each county, or what do they decide what a line is? That red dot you said is
that's
a
the
true line.
corners, the corners.
Corners are remonuments.
And that's a monument that's been established by our county surveyor.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, so that's something we can go by, but Beacon doesn't. I'm confused as to why are they getting off of that? If they see
Well,
the dot there. they should
Not
put it
all
on.
the corners are established.
Oh,
So
I'm
there's
sorry.
other corners that aren't established.
Okay.
They're called green corners that aren't verified by
Yeah.
several
And the-
survey
Oh.
crews.
Right.
So, and descriptions are off too. They don't, you know, have the
Mhm.
right descriptions, and that throws lines off too.
Circumstances there the other night where a parcel that he wanted to build a house on was okay, but then the parcel across the road is the neighbors want to get their land cleared so they can sell it. Well, their property line goes through this guy's buildings. And then
According to Beacon or according
According
to
to
fact?
Beacon,
Mhm.
according to Beacon. So they wanted to know what they could do. And all you could do would be go to the assessor's office, correct? To see what.
Well, they have to get a survey done,
Yeah, then who,
professional.
they'd have to
survey,
get a
not
survey done, and in that instance, I think that both parties agreed to, because they got to survey out that parcel
Yep.
Yeah.
for that new house. They're also gonna use that surveyor to resurvey that line in question.
does our assessor's office have all your square meter, yes, 5 acres. Do you know that the exact, that's 5 acres assessors by their surveys, or do they use the weekend to?
No, it's the exact, it says it's recorded. It's recorded dot to dot to dot.
Yep.
And the different angles or whatever. And that's what Beacon uses. Plugs in, but if they don't have it right to start with,
Mhm.
where they're putting it isn't where it's supposed to be because they don't have an accurate starting point.
Right.
I'm just asking questions.
Right.
here to try to find
Well,
somebody that-
Eric Schmidt can explain this a lot better than I can. But because he gets into his survey lingo and Tammy's good at it too. She can explain it a lot better too. So I suggest, you know,
And they
Maybe
did
I'd
talk
come
to
to
the
a workshop or
landowners
something.
and calm them down and explain,
Right,
you know,
right.
where they were receptive to.
Oh, well, on the Board of Adjustment, that one time we had 3 different surveyors and all 3 were different.
That's true.
So, I mean, on that one there, I can't remember how we decided. I think we went with the fence. The farmer had a fence there, and that fence was there for 30-some years. Well, in the past, if the fence is still there, that's where the line goes. Because it's, you know, that's the way it was in the past, but they change these laws every day. You know.
and a lot of the fences are what they call.
So we got 3 different
Convenience
surveyors, and we
fence.
got 3 different surveys. Where do you draw the line? You know, that's a tough one. I mean, if you're a board making a decision, which line do you take? You know? But they could have that same problem down here in Sheldon if they have one survey that ain't satisfied, so they hire another one, and neither one of them are even close to each other. That's, I don't know, it's just, there's no fix for it, is there? I don't know how you fix it.
I guess you have to keep in mind that Beacon was originally set up just using kind of blanket descriptions. There's nothing,
Mhm.
you know, that says that those lines are accurate. There is that
It-
disclaimer
It is a disclaimer. Yep.
when
Oh.
it comes up.
Yeah.
I guess you have to think about it, how did we get those things before we had Beacon? I think they went out to the site.
And they surveyed. And
And went out to the site and measured. Yep.
It's not like somebody took all of the personal descriptions that we have in Houston County and put them into Schneider to make them, or in Beacon to make them work. It was kind of like text files and they, it became whatever it was there. That's why when the parcels come in now, they try to draw in all of the descriptions.
Right.
To get them.
Yep.
But it's still never going to be 100% accurate.
Legal description at the recorder's office, that's
The legal
the recorded legal description.
The legal description.
So then a surveyor takes that information, goes out, finds a corner point and measures off of there to get to the point here. And then it tells them what direction and how far. And
I think that's how they got the legal description in the first place.
Right.
Right. I think there's becoming a lot of dependence on Beacon and that being the gospel truth. That
Right.
is not
not the case.
That's the
Yep.
problem.
But I know they've been out around and they dug up survey points,
Convenience.
They say, yeah, this is where our survey point comes from, is right here. So they must, I don't know how they figure all that stuff out. It's just my knowledge. There's a whole township of Bloomington, and all of a sudden here's a survey point right by this guy's driveway, and then you look at another one, well, here's one over the hill, I mean, whoever come up with those survey points, that's what I kind of like to know, how they figured that out. and stuff.
Going back many years. but- Okay,
That was back before Dick's time.
Yes.
dragon
It was
chain,
part of the land
dragon
use.
chain.
Yep.
I guess that's all I got.
I think I got a history on lesson on that. It was Daniel Boone's son, wasn't it?
Nathan Boone.
Nathan Boone.
Did
But
Houston
I
County?
know,
He did Houston County?
He did like that Iowa line, right? What
Yes.
do they call that again,
the
Teresa?
neutral zone.
Neutral
In
zone.
fact, we
Oh,
have a
that's
brand new
nice.
kiosk, one on Shore Acres Road and one on Skunk Hollow Road, right below our house there, explaining the whole neutral zone that was built to protect the Indians actually from fighting each other
Mhm.
and preventing. I could tell you hours worth, which I've heard for many, many years.
If Dick was here, we could spend the whole day.
Oh, you're right, you're right.
Would be at supper time.
It's very interesting.
Yep.
Is that it for
I have
reports?
one question on the deal in Bloomington. Is that on the 6th, 7th, and 8th?
We go up, well, we're going up Sunday night. It's actually Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday morning.
Okay, so that's the actual, but I'll have to check with Donna. What are the reservations you got set up for us? Coming in on Sunday?
Correct.
I
Yeah,
thought, okay.
That's correct. If you need to
Coming in
change,
Sunday.
if you need to make any changes, Dewey or any of the other commissioners, just let me know. And
Okay,
we can cancel them a couple days ahead of time, so.
I want to clarify because I'll probably be coming back from northern Minnesota then. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It starts about 8 o'clock on Monday
Monday
morning and goes till about 10 or 11 on Wednesday.
So on December 7th, that's county board meeting.
That's canceled. That was,
Are we are we gonna move it?
we have it the next week.
December 14th. Bob,
December 14th is regular board then.
I think it already says on the 7th.
It's on the
It already
schedule,
says
but
that.
it's not.
Right,
All
it's
right.
already posted
All right.
that way.
Yep.
Question was, do we wanna have a different one to take its place that week?
No.
No, because
Okay.
we set our meetings up in January for the
We could
year.
have-
We have
could have-
truth and taxation that night too. 6 o'clock
Well, that's
On the 14th.
on the 14th.
All right,
So, sorry, one more thing to revisit would be the Bank of the West thing. So Donna, since you were the main person communicating with them, I don't know, do you guys want just the finance committee to meet with them via WebEx sometime? Or I don't know what would be best, but I did tell the gal yesterday that after today, we would contact them with a plan of who's meeting with them and.
Part of me wants to think that we met with Merchants Bank
Right.
as a board, and now we're going to go into a private meeting with Bank of the West. Is that,
We have to come here and talk to the board after the closed session.
No,
They have confidential information they want to share, but they don't want to share publicly.
And then she did also say, it's my understanding from her email that they are not allowed to use Zoom, but maybe to communicate, but maybe that's just with the private information. So maybe you could just request that.
can't they make a presentation without the private information?
yeah,
Exactly,
that's
that's my
what I
question.
think.
It's that,
But that'd be
We
a
can
question for
ask,
her.
Yeah,
I mean, what's so private?
And commissioners, I can talk to Claudia and I can ask her those questions. And then I can probably get you guys an email when this meeting is over and let you know what she said. But, and even like coming down in person, I don't know. I guess I'll have to just ask her some questions and then bring them back to you and see what you want to do. How is that?
It would be preferred that they meet the entire board,
Yes.
because that's what
Merchants did.
merchants did.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll pass that on to her, okay?
Right.
They don't want to tell us, they don't have to.
Mhm.
Anything else from the commissioners? Closing public comment. I don't see anybody on the screen,
Just Donna.
so apparently no closing public comment. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Further discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.